Now, we are graced with special Jubilee years. For example, every 25 years there's a Jubilee year. So in 2025 now, this first month, we are in the Jubilee year of hope. We are Pilgrims of Hope. That's what Pope Francis has declared this Jubilee year to have its theme as. And so bishops and archbishops have named particular locations in their dioceses, almost always the cathedral itself, as the Mater Ecclesia, that is in Latin for the mother church of the diocese. The cathedral itself is a place of pilgrimage, but also other parish churches within the diocese, usually those that have a historical significance, like maybe there's a church in the diocese as well that's on the National Historic Register of landmarks and whatnot. So I know in the Diocese of Owensboro here in Kentucky, I believe we have a total of 4 or 5. I think it's 5, and one of those is the cathedral. And the other 3 or 4 are historical churches or historical parishes. So you can go and receive a plenary indulgence associated with the Jubilee Year of Hope by fulfilling the proper conditions. And your own diocese should by now have an entry at the diocesan website about such locations within your diocese and what's required for the plenary indulgence. And a plenary indulgence, not only wipes away the temporal punishment due to already forgiven mortal sin, but it makes one want to seek a plenary indulgence daily. Remember, we can seek a plenary indulgence once a day for ourselves or for a deceased person, known or unknown to us. So you could carry out the requirements of the plenary indulgence for the most forgotten soul in purgatory, whoever that might be, and have your good works applied to them. Now, not for the works themselves, I've said this many times on Open Line Tuesday, but rather for the charity that the works prosper. So, for example, receiving Holy Communion on the day of the visitation to the church, prayers for the needs and intentions of the Holy Father on the day that you visited the church, the visiting of the church itself, the location declared by your bishop for the Jubilee year, that would be the third item, and the 2 things that don't have to be done on the day itself, like communion, prayers for the Holy Father, and visiting the actual location of the church that's been declared as a Jubilee year site. The remaining 2 things, which would be the 4th and 5th requirement for the Jubilee year, that do not have to be done on the day that you visit the church, are confession itself. You have up to 20 days before or 20 days after visiting the church, the day that you visited the church. But it's understood that on the day you visit the church and receive communion, you're not aware of any mortal sin, obviously, otherwise you're defeating your purpose. So you have 20 days before or 20 days after the calendar day that you visited the church to go to confession. And 5thly and lastly, a personal willed detachment from all sin, mortal and venial. What does that mean, Father Wade? Well, it doesn't mean you're immaculately conceived, I'll tell you that. You're probably going to fall into sin again, hopefully not mortal, but we're human, we're weak. So venial sin will probably come again. But it does mean that you've made a particular willed intention with frequent and deliberate acts of the will to want to be removed from all sin, mortal and venial. That's what that willed detachment means from sin in regards to the teaching of the church. You make frequent and deliberate acts of the will as just a normal part of your spiritual life to want to be removed from all sin, mortal and venial. That's what that means. Doesn't mean you won't fall into sin again, mortal or venial, but it does mean that you make that frequent, fervent, deliberate act of the will. It's an intention in your daily staple rosary. It's an intention in your daily staple chaplet of divine mercy. It's a daily willed intention in your good works that you do just on a regular basis. Tithing, talent, and time, talent, and treasure. Let's say to your community that you live in, which would include your parish church and other things as well, like maybe a birthright office. You give your time, your talent, your treasure, maybe to a soup kitchen during Lent, whatever, or outside of Lent for that matter. So you make a particular willed intention to want to be detached from sin. So again, the 3 things of the 5 total that need to be done on the day of the visitation to the church location that your bishop has declared a Jubilee year site is to the church itself. That's the work, that's the spiritual work that's being done as you're visiting the church. Number 2, you're receiving Holy Communion on that day, preferably in that same church, but it technically doesn't have to be, but you should try to go to a Mass within that Jubilee year site. Number 3, Prayers for the intentions of the Holy Father, that's also done on the same calendar day. So those three things are done on the same calendar day. The two things that don't have to be is your confession, and you have 20 days before or up to 20 days after to go to confession. And then the second thing that doesn't have to be on the day of visiting the church is it should be ongoing in your heart and intellect, that personal willed detachment from all sin, mortal and venial. Let's get on the road to holiness, huh?